Hi, I'm here today with Mark Taylor, who's been researching the area of international cannabis law for a number of years. Mark, I'm just wondering, how can lawyers and business executives knit together the vast and varying changes to cannabis law? I mean, what's your experience been like?
I found it difficult at first because there's so much going on. It's such a complex and fast-moving area. Even if you try and take the split of, I'll just concentrate my business perhaps on medicinal and ignore the recreational, you then have to factor in where's the stuff being grown. So, having to have a knowledge of how the markets are shaking out across Europe is very important. So for me, having taking that big picture approach and looking at everything holistically, that actually enabled me to pick up patterns that I was previously missing before. So things like how powerful constitutional courts are in certain countries. So as an example, South Africa, the top court in South Africa ruled in favor of three individuals who had said, we should have the right to smoke cannabis. It infringes our constitutional rights for it to be illegal, and we're taking this to the top court. It went through, they waged a battle for a couple of years, and then the court actually sided with the individuals, giving the government 2 years to then put a regulatory framework to allow for recreational cannabis to be used by everyone. The South African government did not want people to smoke cannabis. It was anti-cannabis, but it's been made to do that by the court. So they've got until September 2020 to produce the regulations. But I find that really interesting that the government has been pushed into this in an area that it doesn't particularly want to do. And the same patterns were happening in other areas like Mexico. Same thing happened there, where residents who believed that it was unconstitutional to not be able to smoke cannabis took their fight to the court. And one of the quirks of Mexican law is the Supreme Court has to rule on an issue 5 times. It did that. It favoured the people, back the people, and it told the government, you're going to have to set up a framework now. And I found that really interesting because in Canada and Uruguay, which were the first 2 countries to go fully legal, this was a decision that the government made. They were taking it from the perspective of cannabis is a public health issue rather than a criminal issue. Our jails are already full enough. We don't want regular citizens to have criminal records. We're going to take this and we're going to essentially build out some laws around it, tax it, and go from there. And I thought that I would see that everywhere else, where governments would go, we can make a bit of money here. Let's change the laws and try and tax it and make a bit of money. But that's not been the case. Then you start to think, where else in the world do you have courts that are pretty powerful and have a bit of sway over the government? Because these might be the next areas that break out and become the next big cannabis powerhouse.
Okay. So looking at those patterns, being able to make those predictions.
Yeah, that's right. Even in Europe, you're starting to see a split now. The southern countries such as Greece, Italy, Spain, they're the ones who are trying to corner the market for growing, knowing that they can probably sell into the northern markets. Germany is the big one that everyone wants to get into. There's some issues there in terms of the government trying to control everything, trying to control supply. The UK obviously is a huge centre for capital. Even after Brexit, it's going to remain a centre that people want to come to do business. The UK's R&D sector is obviously pretty unmatched. We are going to have a role to play as well, but it's just trying to see where all of these different places fit into each other. Oceania, they're kind of pushing ahead as well. There's a referendum in New Zealand later this year on yes and no. The Australian territories are also taking their own approach to the legal side of it as well. So lots of things going on all over the world.
Yeah.
And having that big picture knowledge, I think, helped me understand and predict trends better than I could do before.
Yeah. It sounds fascinating, and we know you've got a book coming out soon, and these patterns, that's one of the things that you are talking about in you're noticing in the book itself?
Yes, that's right. And it was funny that it was only through writing it that I actually picked that out. I could go back and look and say, well, actually, Argentina's constitutional court was another one that they made this decision almost 10 years ago now to say that it's unconstitutional for the government to lock people up for smoking cannabis. However, the government has managed to create a bit of a fudge. So there's lots of regulatory uncertainty there as well. I certainly thought that other countries would perhaps look at Canada as a model to follow, where they've involved the private sector, and private sector involved in cultivation and the selling of cannabis through dispensaries. Whereas in Uruguay, the government controls everything from cultivation to sale, only through certain pharmacies and things like that. So now you have other countries like Luxembourg who have a range of options here. They can look at Canada and say, is this the model we want to follow? Or do we want to go and do what Uruguay are doing? Okay. It's such a fascinating, fast-moving, exciting area. And some of these countries are really, they're blazing a trail, they're pushing ahead. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you so much, Mark.